The princess no one claimed, the twin sons of Virelia sat behind the golden palace towers, painting the sky in shades of crimson and silver. Inside the grand hall, thousands of alien nobles stood in silence, waiting for the royal announcement. Their eyes glowed in different colors. Their robes shimmered with wealth, but their hearts were full of fear. At the center of the hall stood Princess Alera, tall and graceful, her skin faintly glowing with the light of her royal bloodline. Her hair, silver as moonlight, fell over her shoulders like a river of stars. She wore the ceremonial crown of the Virelian Empire, and her expression was calm, though her heart trembled beneath. The emperor, her father, spoke from his crystal throne. His voice echoed across the hall. The princess of the Virelian bloodline seeks her suitor, one worthy of her power, one worthy of our empire. His gaze swept across the nobles gathered one by one. Alien warriors stepped forward, tall insectoids with shining armor, scaled beings with glowing eyes, feathered lords from distant moons. Each took one look at Alera and then bowed away in silence. Refusing the honor, whispers spread quickly. The prophecy, one muttered. Whoever weds the princess shall bring ruin to their kind, another hissed. Even the bravest among them lowered their heads. Afraid to challenge fate, Alera stood still, her heart heavy. She had dreamed of this day since childhood, the day she would find a partner who saw her as more than a crown. But now, as each suitor turned away, shame burned within her. Her hands trembled slightly, hidden under her royal sleeves. The emperor's patience thinned, his voice grew hard. Is there none among the stars who dares to stand beside my daughter? Silence. Only the hum of the energy crystals and the soft breathing of the crowd. Then the great doors at the end of the hall opened with a deep metallic echo. All heads turned. A figure stepped through the light, wearing dark armor scarred by war and a cloak heavy with dust. He was not tall compared to the others, not shining like them. His skin was plain, his form simple. But there was something in his eyes and a fire that made even the emperor pause. The guards stepped forward, raising their spears. Identify yourself, they barked. The stranger removed his helmet, revealing a human face, tired, marked by battles, but calm. I am Captain Elias Ward of the Terran Alliance, he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the hall like thunder. And I have come to claim the princess. Laughter broke out among the aliens, harsh, cruel, echoing off the marble walls. A human? One of the nobles mocked. Your kind cannot even survive our air without machines. You dare challenge the royal bloodline? Another shouted, but Alera did not laugh. Her gaze locked on his, and for a moment the noise faded. There was something strange about this human, no fear, no arrogance, only determination. The emperor leaned forward, studying him. You, a human soldier, believe you are worthy of my daughter. Elias met his eyes without flinching. Worthiness is not born from blood, your majesty. It is proven by heart. The hall went still again. The emperor raised a hand, silencing the guards who still aimed their weapons. For the first time, curiosity flickered in his ancient eyes. You understand the cost of your words? The emperor warned. To claim the princess, you must face the 3 trials. The trial of strength, the trial of wisdom, and the trial of heart. Many greater than you have perished. Elias nodded once. Then let me be the first human to stand among your legends, gasps echoed. The nobles whispered in disbelief. The old seers exchanged nervous glances. The prophecy had spoken of ruin, but none had imagined a human would be the one to bring it. Alera's heartbeat quickened. She should have felt anger or fear, but instead, she felt something new, a quiet pull toward the human who stood alone among giants. As the guards escorted Elias toward the trial chambers, the crowd began to part before him. Some glared, others whispered, yet none dared block his path. His footsteps echoed like drums of fate. The emperor turned to his daughter. Do not let hope blind you, child, he said softly. This one will fall like the rest. But Alera's voice, calm and clear, answered, Then let me see him fall with my own eyes. From her balcony, she watched as the human stepped into the shadows of the arena below. The firelight glowed across his face, revealing the scars of old battles and the courage of one who refused to kneel. In that moment, the princess of Virelia, born under prophecy and curse, felt something stir inside her chest, not fear, not duty, but the faint spark of faith. And as the drums of the first trial thundered in the distance, the galaxy held its breath, for a new story had begun, one written not in royal ink but in human resolve. The human's challenge. The arena of trials stood deep beneath the palace. Carved from black crystal and molten stone, it was said that even kings trembled there. The walls pulsed with energy, ancient and alive, and the air carried the scent of ozone and war. Elias Ward walked slowly to the center, his boots echoing against the metallic floor above him. Thousands of alien eyes watched from the viewing terraces. Some shouted insults, some placed wagers, others simply stared in disbelief at the human who dared. From the royal balcony, Princess Alara watched quietly. Her fingers gripped the railing. Her heart unsteady around her, alien lords whispered, "He will die before the first strike. Humans are weak. This will be over soon." But Alara's gaze stayed on the human's face. Calm and unshaken, the Emperor rose from his throne, his voice thundering, "Human warrior, you stand in the sacred arena of blades. The trial of strength begins now. Show us your courage, and perhaps your death will be remembered." The gates on the far side opened with a roar, and a massive figure stepped out, a creature of the Draxian war breed, 8 feet tall, covered in plated scales, carrying a plasma hammer that could crush a tank. Its eyes glowed red as it looked down at the human challenger. Elias took a breath, then drew his blade. Not of plasma or energy, but forged steel from Earth, simple and scarred from past wars. The crowd laughed. "He brings a toy knife," one alien jeered. But Elias only whispered to himself, "Old blades never fail." The gong sounded, and the beast charged. The ground shook beneath its feet. Elias rolled aside just in time, the hammer smashing into the floor, sending sparks flying. He moved quickly, striking at its legs. The blade biting through weak joints, the creature roared and swung again. Missing by inches, Elias's armor cracked, sparks bursting from the hit. Blood trickled down his arm, but his eyes remained cold and focused. From the balcony, Alara's breath caught. She saw in him something she hadn't seen in any suitor. Not desperation, but will. He fought like a man who had already accepted death, yet refused to surrender. The alien beast struck again and again, but Elias adapted, reading its rhythm. Dodging each blow with growing confidence, at last he leapt forward, driving his blade deep into the creature's chest. The crowd gasped as the beast staggered, roaring in pain before falling to its knees. Elias stood panting, his armor scorched, his hand trembling. Yet his eyes were steady. He looked up toward the Emperor and bowed. "The first trial is done," he said simply. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then the Emperor rose. "Impressive," he admitted. "But strength alone does not make a suitor. The next test awaits." Alara turned to her father, her voice low. "He fights differently," she said. "He does not fight to win, he fights to prove something." The Emperor frowned. "Humans are unpredictable, child. They burn bright." But briefly, as the arena lights dimmed, Elias was escorted through narrow corridors into the Hall of Minds, a chamber filled with glowing orbs and whispering voices. Here the trial of wisdom would begin. No weapon could help him now. Only his thoughts. The air shimmered, and 6 alien seers appeared before him, their faces hidden under silver veils. "You stand before the Council of Thought," one said. "Your mind will be tested. Your truths will be exposed." Elias stood straight. "Then test me," he replied. "But know this, a human's strength is not muscle, it's memory." The seers extended their hands, energy tendrils wrapping around his head, pulling his consciousness into their realm. Visions exploded before him, Curtis wars, screams, fire, and pain. The memories of Earth's darkest days played in his mind. The fall of cities, the loss of friends. The silence after battle. One of the seers spoke. "Why do your kind fight when peace could save you?" Elias answered, "Because peace means nothing if it is built on fear." Another asked, "Why do you sacrifice so much for others who cannot repay you?" He replied, "Because that is what it means to be human." They pushed harder, showing him images of despair, loneliness, and defeat. But Elias refused to break. He turned the storm back upon them, letting them feel what humanity had felt: hunger, grief, love, and hope. The seers staggered, overwhelmed. For the first time in centuries, they tasted emotion they could not control. "Enough," one gasped. "You have passed." Elias opened his eyes. Sweat rolling down his face, he looked at them and said, "Wisdom is not about knowing everything. It's about understanding what you are willing to endure." From above, Alara's lips parted slightly. Her heart felt something strange, admiration mixed with warmth. The human had faced their greatest test and walked through it unbroken. When he stepped out of the Hall of Minds, The alien guards who once mocked him now stood silent. The nobles whispered again, not with laughter this time, but with something close to respect. The emperor watched him with narrowed eyes. "This human is dangerous," he murmured. "He wins hearts faster than he wins battles." But Alara only whispered to herself, "Perhaps that is what the galaxy has always needed." And as the night deepened over Virelia, the stars seemed to burn brighter, as if watching the strange human who refused to bow. The second trial was done. But the greatest one, the trial of heart, waited in silence. The trial of heart, the dawn rose over Virelia, casting soft gold across the city of spires after surviving strength and wisdom. Elias Ward was summoned to the final trial, the trial of heart. Unlike the others, there were no weapons, no puzzles, only silence and a single door. Princess Alara waited beyond that door, dressed not in royal armor but in a flowing white robe. Her crown was gone, her hair free, her eyes uncertain for the first time. She faced not a challenger, but a man who had risked everything for her. When Elias entered, he bowed slightly. His wounds were still healing, yet he stood tall. "Your Highness," he said, his voice quiet. "I am ready." Alara looked at him, then shook her head. "This trial is not about readiness, human. It is about truth." She stepped closer, her gaze sharp yet full of something soft. "Tell me," she asked, "why do you fight for someone you do not know? You could have stayed safe on your world, yet you came here. To die among strangers?" Elias took a deep breath, his eyes steady. "Because I have seen what fear does to people," he said. "On Earth, we built walls between nations, species, and hearts, and every time we did, we lost something beautiful. I came here because I refused to let fear decide who is worthy of love." Alara's lips parted slightly. She had heard many warriors boast of glory and conquest, but never words like these. "And what if your love brings destruction, as the prophecy warns?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Then let it destroy me first," he said. "But if one heart can change even a single fate, then maybe the curse was never a curse, only a test." For a long moment, the hall was silent. Only the sound of wind through the crystal pillars. Alara felt something stir deep within her, something she had buried long ago under duty and crown. She reached out and touched his chest lightly, feeling the steady beat beneath the armor. "Your heart is strange, human," she whispered. "It burns even when broken." Elias met her eyes. "That's what keeps us alive," he said outside. The emperor and his court watched through the energy veil. The seers whispered among themselves. "Her aura changes," one said. "The curse mark fades," another gasped. Alara turned, walking toward the altar of truth. "The trial of heart is not for you alone," she said. "It is for me as well." She placed her hand on the crystal and light flooded the chamber, revealing the curse mark on her palm, a dark spiral of ancient power. "The mark binds my bloodline," she said. "It punishes love, it turns those I care for into ruin. Are you willing to face that, human?" Elias stepped forward, placing his hand over hers. The mark burned between them, glowing bright. The pain hit them both like fire, but he did not pull away. "I am," he said through gritted teeth, "because no curse is stronger than choice." The crystal cracked, sending ripples of energy through the room. The seers outside stumbled. The emperor rose in shock. Light burst from Alara's palm, pure and white. The mark shattered like glass. Alara gasped, her knees trembling. Elias caught her before she fell. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the curse that haunted her family for centuries was gone, replaced by something brighter. Hope. When the light faded, the hall was quiet again. The emperor stepped forward slowly, his voice heavy. The prophecy. It was not about ruin. It was about change. Elias helped Alara stand. But before he could speak, she held his hand tightly. "You have passed the trial of heart," she said softly. "But more than that, you have changed mine." Above them, the ancient lights of the hall dimmed. As if bowing in respect, the seers fell silent, unable to read the future anymore, for it had already been rewritten outside. The people of Virelia saw a sign in the sky, the twin suns forming a halo around the palace. The old priests fell to their knees, whispering, "The curse is broken. The age has turned," and deep within the palace halls, Elias Ward, a simple human from a distant blue world, stood beside the princess once called untouchable. Their hearts beat in unison, fragile yet fearless, but even as peace filled the air, shadows stirred beyond the palace walls. Not everyone rejoiced. Some saw the breaking of the curse not as salvation, but as a threat in the darkness of the high council chambers. The regent spoke coldly. The human has changed fate. If the prophecy bends once, it can bend again. Another voice replied, Then we will break him before he breaks us. As the stars began to fade behind the morning light, the storm of destiny gathered again, and the galaxy whispered a new name. The human who loved the cursed princess. And for the first time in centuries, love had become rebellion. The Empire's fury. The palace was silent that night. But silence in the Virelian Empire never meant peace. Beneath the crystal floors and glowing towers, whispers spread like fire through the shadows. The nobles gathered in secret, their jeweled eyes filled with fear and hatred. The human has broken the curse, hissed Lord Dravos, his voice sharp as a blade. He has touched royal blood, and the stars have shifted. Another alien lord slammed his clawed hand against the table. He has made the princess weak. Our traditions crumble while the emperor hesitates. In the center of the chamber, the High Regent rose from his seat, his long robes brushing the black marble floor. The emperor is blinded by hope, he said coldly. He forgets what this means if the curse was broken by human blood. It means their kind carries power greater than our own. The room fell into uneasy silence. One noble finally asked, What do we do? The regent's lips curled into a thin smile. We remove the infection before it spreads, far above the conspirators. In her tower chamber, Princess Alera stood by the window. Watching the stars, her thoughts were heavy. She should have been celebrating her freedom. But the palace felt colder than ever. Elias stood beside her, still wearing his battle-worn uniform, his hand wrapped in bandages from the trial's burns. You broke the curse, she said softly. Do you understand what that means? Elias smiled faintly. That hope is louder than prophecy. She turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. No, Elias. It means they will come for you. He met her gaze calmly. Then let them, he said. Humans have been hunted before. We always stand back up for a moment. Alera said nothing. She reached out, brushing her fingers against his hand. You do not understand their power, she whispered. They rule worlds, command fleets. They will not forgive what you've done. Elias looked toward the window where the twin suns began to rise. Then I suppose it's time they learned what humanity can do. The next day, the great bells of Virelia rang, not for celebration, but for judgment. The emperor had called a gathering. The nobles filled the grand hall, their voices like thunder. The prophecy has been broken, they shouted. The human must be exiled, the princess tainted. The old ways must be restored. The emperor sat in silence, his golden crown heavy on his brow. He looked older than ever, torn between pride and duty. When Elias and Alera entered, the hall erupted in chaos. Guards moved to block their path. Nobles spat words like venom. Remove him. He is a curse reborn. He must die. But Elias walked forward without fear, his steps steady. His voice rose above the shouting. You fear change because you cannot control it, he said. You hide behind prophecy because you fear choice. The hall fell silent. His words struck like thunder. The nobles stared, shocked that a human dared to speak so boldly before the throne. The High Regent stepped forward, his eyes burning with hatred. You have no right to speak here, mortal, he hissed. You are a trespasser in our stars. Elias turned his head slightly. Then I will earn that right, he said. Not with words, but with truth. He reached into his uniform and placed a small object on the floor. It was a Terran beacon, a simple device glowing blue. Gasps filled the room as a holographic image rose above it, showing the orbit around Virelia. Dozens of massive Terran dreadnoughts hung in silence, cloaked until now, their hulls marked with the sigil of Earth. The nobles froze. The Emperor's eyes widened. Alera whispered, You called your fleet? Elias shook his head. They were already watching. Outside, in orbit, the human fleet shifted formation, colossal metal giants moving with mechanical precision. Their presence was silent but impossible to ignore. Humanity had never been seen so close to the Imperial core before. For the first time, the galaxy realized the humans were not a minor world. They were a power that had simply chosen to stay quiet. Until now, inside the hall, the High Regent's voice trembled with rage. You threaten us with war. Elias looked him in the eye. No. I show you what peace looks like when it has teeth. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne, the room trembling with his power. He looked at the human, then at his daughter, and then at the nobles. "Enough," he said, his voice cutting through the air. "There will be no execution. There will be no exile. The trials are complete. The human has earned what none of you could. The heart of my daughter." The nobles shouted in disbelief. Some drew weapons, but the royal guards blocked them instantly. The emperor's word was law. Alara stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "My heart is mine to give," she said, "and I give it freely." Elias bowed slightly. "Then my loyalty belongs to you and your people." "Your Highness," but even as the hall filled with uneasy silence, the regent's eyes narrowed. His voice dropped to a whisper only he could hear. "So be it, human, you may have won the heart. But I will take your life." That night, deep within the dark corridors of the palace, the regent's assassins moved like shadows, and above the world of Virelia, the Terran fleet glowed faintly, unaware that the spark of war was about to be lit. The galaxy had witnessed strength, wisdom, and heart, but now it would witness fury. And it all began because one human dared to love a princess no alien would claim. The assassin's shadow night fell heavy on Virelia. The palace glowed with silver light, but behind its shining walls darkness moved. The High Regent's words echoed in hidden corridors. "The human must die before dawn," he whispered. No witness, no trace. From the depths of the palace, assassins emerged, silent, unseen, their armor cloaked in shadow tech. Each carried blades laced with venom that could melt stone. They moved like ghosts, their mission clear. Elias Ward slept lightly in his quarters, his instincts sharpened by years of war. His room was quiet, too quiet even for a royal chamber. The air felt wrong. He opened his eyes, and in the reflection of the crystal window, he saw movement without hesitation. He rolled from the bed just as a blade pierced the mattress where his chest had been. Sparks flew as another assassin struck. Elias grabbed the metal shard of a broken lantern. Parrying the strike, the fight was fast, brutal, silent. The assassins were faster than humans. Stronger too, but Elias was trained in survival. Not style, he fought dirty, using the environment, flipping a table, throwing dust into glowing eyes, smashing one attacker against the crystal wall. One fell, another lunged. Elias caught his wrist, turned the blade, and drove it through his armor. The attacker collapsed, the venom hissing against the floor, but there were too many. The door burst open and more entered. His muscles screamed with pain. His lungs burned, blood streaked down his arm. Yet he stood, refusing to fall. The last assassin raised a blade glowing red, aimed at his heart, but before the strike landed, a flash of blue light filled the room. Alara stood in the doorway, her hands glowing with raw power. The mark that had once cursed her now burned as a source of strength. Energy erupted from her palms, throwing the assassin across the room. The walls cracked, dust falling from the ceiling. She ran to Elias, kneeling beside him. "You're hurt," she said, voice trembling. He smiled weakly. "I've had worse mornings." Guards rushed in. Seeing the carnage, "Assassins," one shouted. "They breached the royal chambers." Alara's eyes blazed with fury. "Seal the palace," she commanded. "Find the traitor." But deep inside, she already knew. Only the High Regent had the power to command such killers. The Emperor arrived soon after, his robe half-torn from rushing through the halls. His eyes widened at the sight of the blood-stained floor. "Who dared this within my house?" he thundered. Elias struggled to stand, refusing aid. "They came for me, Your Majesty," he said. "Not your throne." The Emperor's jaw tightened. "Then they came for my honor." Alara's voice shook with emotion. "Father, the Regent ordered this. I can feel it." The Emperor turned toward his council, rage rising like fire. "Bring me the Regent," he commanded. Hours later, in the Hall of Judgment, the High Regent stood before the throne, surrounded by guards, his expression calm, almost mocking. "You accuse me of treason," he said smoothly. "Yet where is your proof?" Elias, leaning on his sword, spoke quietly. "The assassins used Virelian shadow tech. Only your division commands it." The Regent's lips curled. "You dare accuse me, human? Perhaps you orchestrated this yourself to gain sympathy." The nobles murmured, some agreeing, others uncertain. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Enough," he said. "I will hear no more lies." The Regent's voice darkened. "You are blind, my Emperor. This human is not a savior. He is a weapon." He raised a small data crystal, activating a hologram. It showed ancient carvings, human figures standing beside gods, wielding weapons that split stars. Gasps filled the room. This is from the archives of origin, the regent said. These images prove that humans once served the ancients, the destroyers who ended the First Age. All eyes turned toward Elias. He looked at the images. Carvings of humans leading vast fleets, burning alien worlds. The silence was suffocating. Elias frowned. We have no memory of this, he said. On Earth, our history speaks only of survival, not empire. The regent sneered. Perhaps your kind has forgotten its crimes. But the stars have not. Alara stepped between them, her voice fierce. Enough! You twist truth to justify your hate. The regent's eyes flashed. And you betray your kind for a monster wrapped in flesh. The emperor slammed his staff, the sound echoing through the hall. This court is done, he declared. Elias Ward will remain under royal protection until I have answers. The regent bowed, hiding his fury. As you wish, your majesty, he said. But remember, when humans awaken what sleeps within them, the galaxy will burn again. He turned and left, his cloak swirling like smoke. Later that night, Alara found Elias in the healing chambers. He stared at the hologram of the carvings, his expression distant. Do you believe what he said? She asked. Elias shook his head slowly. I don't know, he said, but if it's true, then humanity has more blood in its past than we ever imagined. Alara stepped closer. The past doesn't decide who you are, she said softly. You've shown me that. He looked at her, a small smile breaking through the pain. Then maybe it's time we decide our own story. Outside the palace, thunder rolled through the skies. The Terran fleet shifted in orbit, their sensors detecting movement near the outer moons, unknown ships cloaked and silent. The regent was not done. He was calling for help, not from the Empire, but from something much older. Something buried in the stars long before humanity ever walked the earth. The Forgotten War awakens. The storm over Virelia grew darker than any seen in centuries. Lightning rippled through the crystal skies. The palace shields trembled as energy waves pulsed from the moons. The emperor stood on the balcony staring upward. Something ancient stirs, he whispered. Something older than our empire, far above. On the third moon of Virelia, a fleet materialized and silent, massive. Their hulls marked with forgotten symbols. Not Virelian, not Terran, but something older. The High Regent watched from his command vessel, his eyes burning with triumph. The Keepers of Origin, he said quietly. They have answered my call. A voice came from the holographic link before him, deep and distorted. You promised us what was lost? Virelian, the regent bowed slightly. And I will deliver it, the human. In the palace, alarms blared. Guards rushed through the halls as explosions shook the outer towers. Elias Ward ran beside Alara, their footsteps echoing through the corridor. Those ships, Elias said. They're not Virelian. Alara nodded, her eyes wide with fear. They're older. They belong to the ones who made us. What do you mean? Elias asked. She stopped at the control room, pulling up holograms of the incoming ships. The Keepers of Origin, she said. They were gods to us once. They vanished before your world was even born. It was said they shaped every species in the galaxy, including yours. Elias stared at the screen, his heart pounding. You're saying humans came from them? Alara shook her head. No, Elias. I'm saying humans defied them. The palace shook again, the shields flickered, and a deep voice echoed through every communication channel in the system. Return the human of Earth, the voice thundered. He carries the blood of rebellion. The Emperor's council fell into chaos. They seek destruction, one shouted. Give them the Terran and they will leave us in peace. Alara's voice cut through the panic. If we give them Elias, none of us will live. They fear him for a reason. The Emperor's gaze hardened. Then we stand with him, he said. Activate the planetary defense grid. Outside, the sky erupted in light. Ancient ships fired beams that tore through the upper atmosphere. Human dreadnoughts moved to intercept. Missiles and plasma fire crossing the void like storms of fire. The Virelian defense towers rose from the ground, forming protective domes of energy. In the command center, Elias gripped the console, his voice calm but fierce. Send word to the fleet. Hold position. No aggression unless fired upon. The Terran Admiral's hologram flickered into view. Sir, their weapons are not of any known design. They're tearing through our systems like paper. Elias turned to Alara. Can we contact them? Maybe they'll listen. Alara shook her head. They don't listen. They command. Suddenly, the control screens flickered, and a bright white symbol appeared, the same one from the Regent's carvings. A voice spoke directly to Elias's mind, cold and vast. Child of Earth, you were made from our flame, you were meant to serve, yet you rebelled? Elias staggered, gripping his head. Who are you? He demanded. The voice answered. We are the makers of flesh, the architects of thought. We built the first humans from the ashes of our war. You were weapons, and you forgot. The visions filled his mind, flashes of an ancient battle. Humans in glowing armor standing against the makers, a supernova tearing across the void, worlds burning, humanity vanishing into myth. Alara touched his shoulder. Elias, what is it? He looked at her, his eyes wide with shock. We didn't evolve, he said softly. We were made, and then we destroyed our creators. Outside, lightning tore across the horizon as the Keeper's main vessel descended into orbit. Its shadow swallowed the palace. The High Regent transmitted a signal. The human is inside. Strike now. A beam of light shot down, cutting through the palace dome. The energy hit the courtyard, exploding into molten fire. Guards were thrown into the air, towers shattered. The Emperor fell to his knees, shielding his daughter with his arms. Elias grabbed Alara, pulling her into cover. We can't win like this, he said. They're not fighting a war, they're reclaiming property. Alara looked into his eyes. Then we show them we're not theirs anymore. She pressed her palm to the crystal wall, ancient runes lighting up. These palaces were built with their own energy. We can turn it against them. Elias nodded. Do it, I'll hold the line. She hesitated. You'll die. He smiled faintly. Then I'll die free. He ran into the open courtyard, plasma fire raining from the sky. Grabbing a fallen soldier's cannon, he fired upward, hitting one of the drones that shielded the Keeper's ship. The explosion tore through the clouds, sending shockwaves across the sky. From orbit, the Terran fleet responded, unleashing railgun rounds that burned through space. The Emperor's voice echoed through the comms. All forces, defend the human. Alara's hands glowed brighter as she activated the ancient core beneath the palace. Energy surged through the city, the ground trembling. The ancient Virelian crystals turned red, feeding power into the defense array. The Keeper's voice boomed again. You cannot fight your makers, Alara screamed. We already did, and released the full charge. A blinding light erupted from the palace, striking the enemy ship. The energy tore through its shields. Cracking its surface like glass, the ship began to fall, fire trailing behind it as it crashed into the far desert. Silence followed, the air thick with smoke and light. Elias stood in the ruins, armor scorched, his body trembling. Alara ran to him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. You're alive, she whispered. He smiled faintly, almost above them. The wreckage of the ancient ship burned like a dying star, but deep inside its broken hull, a single voice whispered through the dark. The first rebellion has returned. The war of origin begins again. The hand and the heart. The sky over Virelia was no longer blue. It glowed with the red dust of battle, and the broken hull of the Keeper ship still burned upon the horizon. The city lay in ruins, yet in its heart, the people stood watching the smoke fade, wondering if dawn would ever come again. Elias Ward walked through the shattered courtyard, armor cracked, face streaked with ash. Around him lay soldiers of both human and Virelian blood who had fought side by side. Princess Alara moved beside him, her robe torn, her crown gone. Yet her eyes were brighter than the sun's. The Emperor sat upon the steps of the fallen palace, wounded but alive. The makers will return, he said quietly. They never lose a war for long. Elias looked toward the burning sky. Then we finish what our ancestors started. Alara turned to him. You cannot fight gods alone, he smiled faintly. We never have. Far above the ruined world, the Terran fleet held formation. Their captains listened to the static messages from Earth and other colonies. Humanity was awakening to the truth of its creation. On every screen across the galaxy, the recordings of Virelia spread, showing humans and aliens fighting together against their creators. The Regent, once thought dead, emerged from the wreck of his flagship, his body scarred and his eyes glowing with Keeper energy. He spoke to the survivors through their comms. The makers offered me eternity and I accepted. Your empire belongs to them now. His words echoed across the channels, spreading fear like a poison. Ships that once served the Emperor now turned their guns toward Virelia. Elias stood at the center of the palace ruins. Watching the enemy fleet descend, he turned to Alara. This isn't a war of worlds anymore, it's a war for the heart of every living thing. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath the armor. Then we fight for that heart, she said. Together they walked into the ancient throne room, where the Virelian core still glowed beneath the floor. Alara spoke softly. This core connects to every crystal city across our empire. It was built with the Maker's technology. But if we change its frequency, we can make it ours, Elias nodded. And if it fails? She smiled sadly. Then we become a legend. The sky split open again as the Regent's new armada descended, black ships pouring fire into the atmosphere. The Terran fleet rose to meet them, railguns igniting like stars. The air shook with the sound of ancient vengeance. Elias activated the palace core, its light spreading through the city. Alara joined him, placing her hand over his. Their energies merged, human and Virelian, flesh and crystal, heart and will. The ground trembled, and from the depths of Virelia, massive constructs rose. Old defense machines the Makers had left behind. Now woken by a different code, their eyes glowed blue instead of red. The color of human hope, Alara whispered. They listen to you, Elias replied. No, they listen to us. The machines marched toward the sky, firing beams of pure energy that pierced the enemy fleet. The Regent's voice screamed through the comms. You cannot defy your creators, Elias answered. We just did. The battle lasted through the night. When the sun finally rose, the sky was clear. The enemy ships lay broken in orbit. The Regent's signal gone. In the quiet that followed, Alara and Elias stood at the highest tower, watching the first light touch the ruins. The Emperor walked to them slowly, his voice heavy but filled with peace. The Empire owes its life to you both. From this day on, Virelia and Earth stand as one. Alara looked at Elias, her eyes soft. We were never meant to meet, she said. Yet you changed everything. Elias took her hand, his voice gentle. Sometimes the universe writes its own story. The people of Virelia gathered below, cheering their names, and for the first time in recorded history, the anthem of two worlds was sung together. As the day faded, Alara stood beside Elias on the balcony, the wind carrying the smell of smoke and renewal. She whispered, What happens now? He looked toward the stars. Now we rebuild, but if the Makers return, they won't find servants waiting, they'll find a united galaxy. She smiled, and their hands intertwined as the two suns set behind them. The human and the princess, the warrior and the curse-breaker. Their names etched forever in the records of two civilizations. For in that moment, every being in the galaxy understood a simple truth. Power may rule the stars, but only the heart can change them, and so the legend of Elias Ward and Princess Alara was born. A story passed through ages, told whenever someone dared to say, no alien dared to claim the princess until a human stepped forward.